Welcome everybody. This is the inaugural session for Unfiltered. I'm John Marchant, it's my colleague Bryce Munn, and you're joining us here at KipperTie in our lovely headquarters. I'm hoping you can see what a nice building. They're very spoiled here. It's a nice place to be. So we wanted to share that with you. We're really just going to have a chat. I don't want this to be too formal. I'm trying to dodge the usual marketing speak and really just give you guys a bit of an insight. And we want to try and do this pretty regularly with any luck. So yeah, it's as simple as that. I know there's going to be lots of people looking for the when can I have it of new products. Yeah, I get that. We'll talk about some of that as well. But really part of it is just to kind of talk a bit about the ethos of what we do, just kind of have a little catch up and see, what there is to talk about really. Indeed, obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on the comments on the live stream as well. So feel free to ping stuff through there. We'll try and get to that if we're able. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people who are familiar with KipperTie's products know who I am. Bryce is probably not a face that you've seen before.
You might not even know that as well as make products, we do shoot our own videos as well.
Yeah.
So that's why you probably haven't seen me before, because I work on that side of the business.
Yeah, that's it. So we started out as a production company, and we still are. A good 50% of the business is in that zone. And yeah, Bryce, as head of production, is also probably one of our big customers. Just about any time we make something, we're passing it across the room to say, yeah, here you go. So we get to, test things in the real world a bit, but we also get to really see what works and why we want certain things to be certain ways. And that, I think, that's a big part of why I wanted to kind of have these sessions, is to get the chance to talk without the marketing angle on it about why we make stuff the way that we do, and what the products are, why they're shaped the way that they are. So, I mean, we've got some new shiny stuff here, which we're going to talk about soon in my little show and tell zone here. So we can have a look at that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to start from the beginning with this really. I think some people will be aware, like I say, that we're initially a production company, but all of our stuff came out of a need. We wanted gear to do a certain job. And we were able to kind of leverage those ideas and say, okay, well, let's fix it by coming up with our own stuff. And that's becoming more common. It's becoming easier and easier to enter the market and manufacture and make things. With modern rapid prototyping, 3D printing, there's lots of ways you can get into it. That said, it's easy to start, hard to follow through. It's hard to make stuff, and it's deep and complex. Probably doesn't help that a big part of why we want to do it is because we want things that are really good. And you can make something quick and dirty very easily. Trying to get something that's really good is a whole other story.
Especially something, naming no names, but especially something that is complicated and really good.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, we started simple. The first stuff that we were making was literally just optical filters on their own, and that's still at the core of everything. But yeah, it was literally pieces of glass. And I can go back to the point where we were experimenting with red cameras, taking stuff apart. I was buzzing Jared late night emails to say, if I pull this apart, what's going to happen? How much is my warranty spent? And he was very forthcoming at the time and said, no, it's okay, play with it, have some stuff. And he kind of shared some tech with us and some ideas, and we were able to really kind of run with that.
Out of interest, are we talking Red 1 days, DSMC1?
This is DSMC1, yeah. So I know that's just before your time with us, really. So DSMC2 is where you kind of got into it. Yeah. DSMC1 wasn't built for the same level of user interaction with kind of deep technical stuff. There was no third-party program as such. It was quite a different situation. And in fact, we really felt like the philosophy was going to be, if you touch anything, you so much as undo a screw on that camera, you've voided the warranty, you're probably in all kinds of trouble. So it was a bit of a scary thing to do at that point, really. But we dived into that, and it really has paid off. I had an email literally, which I owe Nick a reply on, literally just the other day, telling us about some really interesting successes with using our OLPFs in DSMC2 bodies to create really interesting content. So although the industry moves on in terms of what's new, it's really satisfying that we've got product out there, stuff out there that's working and doing cool things for people. That's a really satisfying thing, and it being satisfying, it being worth it, is a big part of why we are doing this, because I came from the production side. I would not have stepped into a desk job sitting in front of CAD all day if you'd asked me that right at the beginning. It wasn't really my thing.
That's kind of come back in the other direction now as well, which is nice. In my role, I often find myself in situations where we're hiring freelancers, maybe somebody who's watching now, who sees the KipperTie name as a production company trying to hire them for a shoot, and they're like, "Oh, I know you. I use your products.
You make these things." That's it.
That's quite satisfying.
Yeah, it's interesting how, as a brand name, we're probably much more widely known, certainly in terms of geographical reach, because the majority of what we do in terms of production is on the high end of the corporate industrial stuff inside of the UK, with some reach into the US and Europe, but it's not so public facing. It's a business to business thing. Very much. We got, just turned 25 years of reputation doing that. It's a long time, but it's B2B. You don't really, you don't have a public persona of any kind when you do that. And these days, KipperTie has actually got some real brand awareness, which is a lovely thing. I get messages from people saying, "Oh, did you see? I was watching so and so, and there was a behind the scenes, and I saw some of your gear." Really, it's really cool stuff. I love to see that.
Even we had a funny situation not that long ago where a customer of ours on the production side was on a shoot with another supplier and saw our name on the equipment. And a little bit of confusion.
So how did you get? What's going on there? No, it's that little bit of industry ubiquity for a bit of notoriety like that is really it's a really pleasing thing to see, and I'm kind of feel honoured really anytime anybody chooses our stuff. It's a really good feel good thing. I wanted to talk just a bit because to get your input on this. So a big selling point for us has always been that the filter systems that we put together, we always want to have a clear filter in there. I've got my hunches, which are based around, we live in a soggy grey country with very little light. We're not in the harsh African sunlight, for example. But if you were prepping to go on a shoot, regardless of whether it's our gear, whatever it is, and you were tied to, you're always going to have a minimum ND in your matte box. It's going to suck, isn't it, basically?
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Having clear, readily accessible is essential.
That's
all the productions we do.
And I was a great proponent of Red's motion mount when that first came out. I was so excited, and I'm still kind of fascinated by some of the sort of side benefits that had in terms of motion cadence, the fact that you could have different types of motion blur, some really interesting creative stuff. But I wanted to love it so much, and we bought the things, and like a hell of a lot of people, I guess, in soggy parts of the world, we put them on the cameras and went, "Oh, it's brilliant, this is, look at all these things."
they're no
crap,
longer in
we've
our
got to
kit
take
list.
it off. They're not on the kit. Yeah, and
Not on the kit list.
it's so frustrating because it was such a nearly brilliant
Yeah,
product.
yeah,
And that simple little last step was what killed it, unfortunately, at least for us. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons. Literally, that product at that time was one of the reasons that I was sat there. It was when I was running teaching education sessions for Red. And these conversations would come up when I was sat there doing the back of an envelope sketches, thinking there's got to be another way of doing it. The thing is, it's compromises. Everything in engineering is a compromise of some kind, and our own stuff has compromises. That had compromises.
yeah.
Front of lens filters have compromises. Engineering just is. You can't have it always. But I think one of the interesting factors is that in this day and age, if you're making cameras, you're an electronics company. There's still some ARRI 435s out there doing sterling work. There's still some real cameras, the way I kind of feel like, with film running through them. But there's electronics still happening there. These days, it's a purely electronic, code-driven world. So when that team of people are tasked to solve a problem, obviously they're like, well, this is the tool set we employ. We go straight to the electronics, straight to that technology, because taking a sidestep out of that into optomechanical, physical things, it's not the comfort zone.
Exactly.
And part of the issue is when it's electronic, when it's built into a product like that, you have to work from a spec sheet. You have to look at, you have to be able to look at something on paper when you're prepping for a shoot and say, well, what should we take? How often does Fernie let you have a full prep day prior to a shoot?
It's rare it occurs in the schedule.
Yeah, we do our best.
Yeah.
But often it's what's been working. Can we adapt that? Can
Indeed.
we, so you get your go-tos.
Exactly, yeah.
And if you're given a high pressure scenario, you're going to default back to, well, what do I know works?
Exactly. Let's use the kit we trust, the kit we know. And you want a robust solution that you can really rely on.
Yeah, that's it. And honestly, that's why so much stuff is still, if we're talking about filters, it's still put a PV size filter in a matte box.
Exactly.
Because everybody knows what it is.
Yeah. Everybody can even see from a distance.
You can see it.
There.
It's right there. Yeah. And that's perfectly justifiable. Obviously, it's got its own set of compromises. Not least the classic, I won't name the client name, but we definitely had one where somebody from the client team had to be trusted to hold a filter momentarily. Not enough hands. The AC's busy running after something. Just hold the filter. Don't drop the filter.
Yeah. You can where that went.
Yeah. And that stuff is vulnerable.
Yeah.
Obviously it is.
Yeah.
But, it's a case of trying to make the educated choices. If you're trying to prep a shoot for maybe something where you've got a bit of time ahead, what's your thought process? What's your resource that you go to if you're thinking, do I have the right gear for this? Do I need something else? How would you approach it? Not to put you on the spot too much.
Well, the first thing you've got to think about is what you're actually shooting. And for us, that often falls down because it's very documentary-esque. It's not planned shot for shot. Sometimes we don't know locations. We don't even know if it's interior or exterior. For us, that always guides us into we need the most flexible solution. A flexible solution that is just going to work in whatever situation. If we have the prep day to test that, then we're going to test in different scenarios. We're going to test shooting indoors, we're going to test shooting outdoors, and we're going to,
And you can find edge cases and special things to do when you get that time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the example, I mean, maybe you can describe for me what it consisted of, but you guys were prepping what I would, until very recently, would have said is a jib that was basically way below spec for the job that, the type of work that we do. Too wobbly, too basic, no features to speak of.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can tell us how that was shaping up.
It was only really possible, when we had the prep time. You would never do that and trust that gear without seeing it work. But the job in question, we had to travel. We had to set up very, very quickly. We didn't have access to the place where this jib was going to be used for very long. And so we needed something that would slot together fast. And that meant that it wasn't a robust, solid jib.
Yeah.
But it was practical because camera equipment has developed enough to a point where we could put in this case, it was a Ronin 4D on there.
Yeah.
You had enough stabilization. It worked. It was safe. And out of the box, very, very fast.
Yeah, and it's the 4D is a very integrated system.
Yeah.
So in terms of grabbing a monitor, having everything kind of function properly, it's interesting because it's allied in a very big way towards consumer style tech, but applied to a professional environment. Honestly, it feels sort of embarrassing sometimes in our line of work where you take a consumer piece of technology and think, oh, hang on, this does this actually better than the high-end professional equipment.
So I guess what you've been doing to move the conversation along to, I know, the question that's probably
I know.
What you've been doing is taking something, a consumer-esque, prosumer-esque idea, and making it a cinema end, high-level thing. And it might have taken you a little bit longer than you initially thought it was.
That happens. That happens a lot. I mean, the thing is, what we want is systems that are robust, like you say, systems that are going to function, cover as many bases as possible, be flexible, and also hit those various kind of wants and needs that we have as professionals. And the part, I was going to say, with 4D, for example, that's a great example of where it does a limited functionality set incredibly well. But when you want to customize and move outside of what it does, all of a sudden you're completely limited by it. And it's analogous to the way that Apple configure their phones, their computers, a lot of their software. Incredibly intuitive, really, really easy until you hit the point where it no longer lets you do this. And then there's no customization available. There's no.
And we're working in a creative industry where
there's always a question further.
Do things slightly outside the box or do things slightly differently.
Exactly. So, I mean, customization, just one more little tangent before we have a look at this stuff. Customization is a really big deal. And, we're super open to that. You've seen the number of times that the answer is, we've got something like that. Let's adapt it. Let's change it. Let's alter it.
Pester you from our side of the room.
That's
saying, we've got a shoot coming up.
Can we just have? I mean, we've just been seeing some behind the scenes stuff from a good friend and customer of ours, John Marchant, who we've repeatedly now made customized versions of our revolvers for very specialized setup that he's involved with, involving effectively offset fisheye lenses in order to project hemispherical imagery. It's
fantastic from a technical point of view.
Technically fantastic, and really interesting, and made possible in part because us and companies like us are able to say, it's fine. I know that's not going to shift hundreds and hundreds of units. You need 2 of something, but we can do the 2 of something because we are. I mean, it speaks a lot about the fact that we are the people who genuinely design, manufacture, and assemble the stuff here
and use
it.
The fact that your heritage is in as a cinematographer yourself you find it
yeah.
interesting, these jobs, and therefore you're invested to go on and
there's a big
help
part of
somebody
it
in the
that
similar.
is like, I hear a complex brief like that, and so often it comes from wildlife cinematography, for example, where people have just outlandish things that they need to try and do.
And you have a professional respect for that. And like, I will help you.
Yeah, I'm absolutely going to help you get this done. You know, when you're talking about, I don't know, for example, hiding a camera in a reed buried in the sand with an optical relay system, or using a camera on a wire cam at night in infrared to capture a bat as it flies between netting in the jungle. I mean, things that are just impossible, honestly. So I've got huge respect for people when they do that. So the ability to support them and say, you know what, you need something special, let's do everything we can, move mountains and make that work. That feels really good then to pack that stuff up and go, off you go.
Yeah.
Do your worst to it. I mean, speaking of do your worst to it, there's a cadre of people down in Bristol who my colleague Natasha regularly receives items from for repair. The wildlife guys beat on the equipment really hard, but we don't begrudge it, and it kind of holds true for everyone. If people break glass in our systems, stuff gets damaged, you know, we just look after it.
Absolutely.
It's just part of the scenario.
Anyway,
so let's talk a little bit about what we've got sat in front of us. I know people are interested. What is it? What is it?
What's going on with this?
So, been various sneak peeks along the way, and we are behind because it's designing and manufacturing stuff, and you get behind, I'm afraid. There have been a lot of reasons why we're a bit behind, but chief among them is just that it takes time to do stuff to the standards that we want. The core of this Strata Electro, which is the product we've got sat in front of us, is optical filters, yet again. And we are just very finicky about it. This thing, I can show you one other thing in the little show and tell zone here. So if I can hold that up. Okay. So this is a combination clear and ND filter, one of 3 that sits stacked inside this. And I mean, you can see the size that we're working to here. It's under 1 millimeter thick, including everything that's going on. There's precision movement from lead screws with anti-backlash designed to move them. I've kind of gone to town on it, probably over the top, probably a bit too much, but just hopefully gives an example of the sort of precision and scale that we're talking about. This glass is basically the reason that we are behind. We work really closely with our optical supplier, but I push them. I'm sure they hate me every time I say that's good. Thank you. Please try a little bit further, push it a little bit better. I've seen you can do this, so please do more. And I'm always trying to get a little bit less internal reflection, a little bit more precise on the filtration values. And the problem with that is basically that, like a lot of engineering, there's no 100% perfect end goal that has either time or price attached to it. It's literally, it's just diminishing returns of how much more time and money do you put in.
Exactly.
And you have to choose a point where you say, okay, that's good enough now.
The fact is, I guess what we're achieving with this is we're getting as close as we can to match previous KipperTie products in how they perform.
Yes, exactly. So it's a lot easier when you have individual pieces of glass, just a single filter, to say, okay, it has a value, it transmits. We're very keen on what we refer to as full spectrum filtration, and that's a term that's used across the industry now to basically mean that we filter visible and invisible light the same amount. So any kind of offset of characteristics between visible and IR on the sensor, we're not just chopping off the IR willy-nilly. We're saying, okay, let's just pass everything through evenly so that whatever the camera's characteristics are, we preserve those as we go down through the stops. But yeah, that's relatively easy to achieve if it's one piece of glass.
Yeah, and that's certainly the standard, I guess, people are used to in the cartridges.
Yes, exactly. That's it. And we moved to a stacked system with the Strata PLND, which is a Raptor-specific product. We really had in mind our wildlife friends with that because it's a really robust, heavy, chunky mount designed for stuff like the CN20. So you're putting a stonking great lens on, and you need behind the lens ND. I mean, I know I'm king of the tangents here. CN20 hates front filtration. It kills off the sharpness. So rear filtration really works for it.
Why then with this? Did we not just stick an electric motor on the Strata?
Because it's about preserving a sensible niche, preserving a type of product, and giving differentiation. I think I hate when a product comes out and it supersedes something that you're invested in and doesn't offer differentiation or a real reason for being. So this stuff isn't replacing Strata, it isn't replacing Revolver. Revolver is still quick, simple, robust, fast. I joke that you can clean the filters by taking it out and wiping it on your shirt, but you literally can. It's that, it's that tough and that simple.
I think you'd have a hard time getting a filter out of this to wipe it on your shirt.
Yeah, exactly. This is an integrated, complex product, but the point is it's integrated, complex, and relatively well sealed. So you're not going to have to clean it out in the same kind of way. But yeah, it's a balance. This is intended to fit a much broader range of stuff. So we're not just addressing red. Anything with E-mount and RF mount initially, we'll look at further stuff as well. And the form factor is really, really tight.
Yeah, considerably smaller than Strata.
Yes.
Is what, as a user, I'm much more used to.
Yeah, that's it. It's looking at it head on like this, that form factor fits the shape of the original Komodo. And the way we've managed to sculpt things away here, it will fit quite happily on a FX3, FX30, R5C, and other mirrorless small form factor stuff. So yeah, it's intended to be a different product. We could have just sort of motorized the Strata PLND, but again, it's Raptor only, and it's chunky and it's built for those big rigs. So this is meant to be light and effective and small. But obviously, this is kind of the march of tech. I can squeeze more in now.
Yeah.
One of the big engineering decisions to be made with the Strata PLND was how many stages of filtration are we going to put in. So Revolver is a single piece of glass. Strata PLND is a sandwich, two pieces of glass, so two trays that move in combination. And I have you to blame for the fact that this is it's a pure mechanical system. But actually at the time, mid-pandemic, that was the perfect approach because it was hard to get hold of electronics. Major motor manufacturers being held up for an IC here or there that they couldn't get hold of.
To do something without electronics, put a product on the market relatively quickly, and it's a solid product that is very different to what we're offering now.
Yeah, exactly. It was partly a product of its time and the situation, but also I do have a huge amount of belief in pure mechanical systems and what they have to offer because people work in really tough environments.
We've already spoken about the wildlife guys, right?
Yeah, that's it. And electronics and complex systems are not for every scenario.
So we're half an hour in, John.
Yeah, I know. Half an hour into my 20 minutes that I like to.
What's going on with this? The R&D of this, where are we at?
Where are we at?
Can we expect shipping?
Oh,
Dare I ask?
dangerous questions. So right now, the status that we are in here is that I have got in my hand a working product. The core functionality of it being a lens adapter with physical glass, electronically actuated. That's all working. It's doing its thing. The glass, which is up to a specification that I'm happy with, I have signed off. Making multiple pieces of multi-coated glass to high specification is just long and slow.
So the glass spec is done now?
Glass spec is done.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
However, actually having it in our hands, that's a different story. It's on its way to us, and it's taking time.
What we're looking at now isn't this prototype, I guess.
Yeah, this is a prototype. What that really means is pretty much just that the circuit board inside is hand assembled, which is a nightmarish concept. If anybody has ever hand assembled surface mount electronics, that's a lot of fun to have to do. But the core concept here is working. There's some peripheral stuff that we're going to be doing, which gets us into the realm of firmware additions at a later date.
Yeah.
And it's not a zone I'm really very comfortable with. I want to deliver something where the core functionality is just there. And that is going to be the case. So RFPL, when it's shipped, the core functionality of the filtration will work. The additions that we're looking at are things like remote control through the little 4-pin LEMO. It's all implementable and is partially done, but we need to focus on making sure that everything else is really robust.
Yeah.
We'll give people the option though. So when the product is actually launched, you'll be able to elect not to have the port if you know you're not going to need it.
That's brilliant.
It's just, it's retrofittable. We have a USB-C port for firmware updating as well. So as well as being kind of future-proof for additional functionality, it's future-proof physically as well. The housings will be all set up. One of the reasons that we're doing it is I hate having to pass on costs that the customer shouldn't be having to pay.
And LEMO seems, and it's across the board for me, purchasing equipment, any cable or anything that's got a LEMO on is always expensive.
Yeah, the connector itself, literally it's about a £50 item. And that is all that we'll charge for selecting that as a future-proof option when you're buying one. But I'm not going to make people pay for a connector that they think they're never going to need. It's just wasteful.
So if you don't have that, if you don't purchase it with the option of that in future, it literally comes physically without that connector.
It comes physically without the connector. If you want to send it back to us to be upgraded to it, we're open to that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's built to be universal as far as possible, as far as the internals are concerned. I've tried to be a good designer, a well-behaved designer.
Which is perhaps why you've taken a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's it. But, that's sometimes that part of the process is one of the toughest things, is saying, okay, I need to try and build in some parts commonality. I need to have a shared architecture. I need to have a system that makes sense rather than a system that is built, entirely bespoke for every variation of the product.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not that easy. It's, it's time-consuming stuff. The some of the other stuff that we'll add as we go, again, because there's electronics inside, we can firmware enable things like passing through data to the camera from the /i, for example. But we also have real flexibility there in that if the right people want to allow it, we can then talk direct to camera as well and have functionality that way.
But we're putting it on the market before that because those conversations take
take a long time and people have, with all the respect they deserve, they have their own stuff to do.
Yeah.
We're a small part. We're a little cog in the machine there.
So in terms of putting it on the market, what's left hold up wise?
What's left is basically the arrival of glass and circuit boards. We have pretty much got everything dialed in apart from that. anybody who's got really into manufacturing and making stuff will know that one of the most complex things you do is actually design the machine for making what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So I've spent more time designing jigs, processes and equipment that help us build these things probably than designing the product in its own right, because we've got to be able to handle it, build it, work with it,
and believe it or not, assemble it in this barn.
No, exactly. I mean,
everything that goes out of the door comes or is assembled here, right? It's
that's it. I think people are surprised. I mean, obviously there are elements of manufacturing that the Far East is the class of the world at. We are not going to compete at trying to make surface mount circuit boards in volume. And people are probably surprised to learn as well that a lot of optical stuff, I mean, it's a big misunderstanding that people have about Chinese quality. China are capable of producing some of the most high quality stuff that you can possibly imagine in the technological realm. It's just whether you're willing to pay for it. And people too often assume that Chinese equals cheap. And actually the cheap person in that equation is the Western person saying, oh, we can get that made for not very much, and we can put a nice big markup on it. There's your cheap person. And we take a lot of pride in making sure that we do all our own design, assembly, and it all comes through here. What about the circuit board
in this? Where's that been designed?
So the circuit board, thank you for the really obvious segue. It's one of the reasons that we're a little bit behind, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to make an excuse of it because it's a deliberate choice that we made. We don't design the actual circuit boards in-house. It's not a skill that I have. I can specify it. And it's not something that we have enough demand for across our products for it to be something that we've brought in-house. We want to be able to use the very best people, and the very best people, we don't have enough scope to kind of consume their time in the right kind of way. So we've been working with third-party supplier, and we chose a company based out of Kharkiv in Ukraine. The point that we were starting this project was roughly the point where things were looking very, very scary over there, and faced with a choice between a variety of Western European suppliers and designers and so on, and some guys in the Ukraine who really looked like they could do with some help. It was kind of an easy choice, basically. We absolutely respect their skill and their capability, and being able to provide a bit of revenue, a bit of support from our side feels like a real win. The only downside is, of course, it's still a turbulent place. It's difficult to ship physical things back and forth. We don't need to do that very often. The vast majority of the development work that we've been doing, we just share stuff electronically. But here and there, we need to get prototype stuff back and forth, and you can imagine that's not been straightforward. Stand by the decision, though. I'm not going to say that it's an excuse for why we're lagging behind. Realistically, the main reason that we're not shipping these things out the door right now is that I needed to be satisfied that the glass was up to standard. And when it takes months to iterate upon, because these are slow processes, it's a really painful decision when the guys put stuff together for me and I run it through my tests and go, yeah, that's really close. And really close means we go around again for months.
Which means there might be some shoots out there using the previous generation.
This is
the consequence of that decision.
That's it. It's a tough one. So what I wanted to do with Strata Electro is make sure that we got the core of it as good as we possibly could before we started, down any other road. And we've been building up physical hardware along the way. I mean, you've seen it knocking around. We've got shelves and boxes full of a lot of the peripheral stuff, and we've been building ahead of time. But it's still the initial products are going to ship out a bit at a time, gradually it'll start making its way. I'm not putting an exact date on it, but as soon as I have everything in hand that I want, we'll push stuff live on our website. And yeah, I mean, we've got some key resellers who we work really closely with, and I know that they will be probably some of the first people to have hands-on stuff, because we really trust their ability to get the right gear into people's hands. But yeah, supply is going to be limited to start with, and then it's going to start to roll. And I think honestly, because this addresses more than just the red market, I can see a broader use. We love the small mirrorless cameras for our own purposes.
Absolutely, yeah.
If I were, I know that one of these is going to disappear onto an FX3 of ours very quickly and live there forever.
Indeed.
It's a bit of a no-brainer. The FX3 is a great little camera, but you're compromised in terms of the ND. So to have clear 3, 6, 9, all the way through in one-stop steps to 2.1, in combination with the PL, that's a real winner. And
absolutely.
And there are going to be bolt-ons like we've got here. So this guy's wearing the bracketry for Komodo at the moment. We have obviously similar stuff for Raptor. These are familiar concepts for people, the various ribs and supports. It's sensible to do. The RF mount is super flexible, super friendly, but it has its limitations. So we want to be able to tie stuff down, really solidly.
If I can do another brush segue, tying stuff down.
Yes.
Shall we start drawing to a close? So,
indeed. Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully people have got something out of listening to me witter on. I'm going to see if we can reconvene on this in a week's time or something maybe a little bit outside of.
See what more has progressed.
Yeah, we'll keep updating people. I want to dive a bit more into the tech where we can. And
I'm intrigued to see, because I actually haven't seen any of the results off. You say this glass is signed off.
Yep.
And I've seen the very early tests, so I'm intrigued to see how far it's come from the early R&D.
Yeah, I mean the crazy thing is that one of the core tests, and I'll try and wrap this up, but one of the core tests is basically shooting color charts. Under strong lighting, under IR polluted light, that kind of thing. And when you get to the point that you're really satisfied with it, the irony of it is that the test results basically look like 8 of the exact same image, because that's what you want, is every single one to look exactly the same.
Indeed. Underwhelming.
But it's very underwhelming. Yeah, that's it. Yes, the result being nothing.
You know what I want to do? I want to shine a light through it and look at flares and stuff.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, flares and effects on bokeh and stuff like that. Yeah. Anytime you put anything around a lens, you affect that.
Absolutely.
You know, so we can't ever say it's without compromise, without anything at all. There will always be some change to the character of a lens when you use a filter, and that's doesn't matter. It can be front, behind. You're always going to have an effect of sorts. But it's a full frame scope, as it were, in terms of the size. And I've spent altogether too long thinking about that portion of things. But at the end of the day, the most valuable thing is going to be when people get them in their hands and start shooting with them.
Absolutely.
We'd be really, really interested to see what it enables. Basically, that's the exciting bit. And it's always slight kind of trepidation. You're like, okay, I suppose I'll let you have it now.
Out it goes into the wild.
That's it. Let people use and abuse.
Yeah.
I have to say,
and wait for it to come back from Bristol broken.
Yeah, exactly. See who's managed to trash it. I actually find it really fascinating. I not very long ago, and we'll post this up on our socials sometime fairly soon. found one of our EF revolvers for DSMC2 for sale in an absolutely ruined state. I don't know what had happened to it. I don't think the person selling it knew what it was. It was on eBay and looked like it had been in a swamp, basically. But I find it kind of fascinating and kind of rewarding when I see people who have really used the stuff we make, like really beaten on it, and it's still working, still doing its thing. So that one's been getting a refurb in a
in an amusing way.
Just because it's quite satisfying to bring it back to life properly.
So I guess keep an eye out for socials for that.
That's a little fun one.
And keep an eye out on socials for the next one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, hopefully this has been interesting for people. It'll be up on our YouTube indefinitely. And join us again for another one of these. I'll try not to ramble too much, but
we will get to some questions of yours at some point.
Yeah, we will, I promise. But I really want to dive into some of the deep stuff, basically. That's the reason that I want to do this.
Absolutely.
I can't write this stuff down in marketing copy because, honestly, it's going to sound like rubbish. It's not the right venue. I want to be able to talk from the heart about the products, and that's what this is for. So I guess with that, we'll see you all again soon.